Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Benchmade Triage. Thank you first off to my buddy Christian for giving me a great deal on this, making it possible for me to finally review this knife that I've talked about and actually recommended to people in specific situations for a long time. So much appreciated there, Christian. Next thing, let's do a size comparison. Of course, Spyderco Delica, you can see the Triage is not small, both in terms of handle and in terms of blade. Here it is against the Rat 1 in D2 steel, and so blade length-wise, they're in the same department, as well as blade height-wise, for that matter. Right here is your steel wheel cut jack in 3.5-inch blade, and what the heck, this is the Benchmade 940. So you can see here that the Triage is markedly larger, just in pretty much every dimension. The blade is a little longer, it's way thicker, heavier, etc. So this is the Benchmade 940-2, by the way. So anyways, next thing, there is no disassembly for this knife. Unfortunately, although I can almost understand it, we'll talk about it later, the pivot as well as some of the other screws seem to be in there pretty permanently with some kind of a hardcore thread locker. And also, this guy is available in black G10 and also with or without a black blade with serrations. So keep that in mind. Then one final thing to note, this is a rescue knife, and so it has a second blade back here, which is a strap cutting blade, which is designed, here we go, let's take a little piece of fabric here and see if we can make the cut. Come on, here we go, perfect. It's designed to give you a seatbelt cutting sort of blade or otherwise strap cutting, rope cutting, and it does have a nice big entrance there for it. And it also has a glass breaker in the back there. So this is really a dedicated rescue knife in many ways, and we'll keep coming back to that later on. So let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of the Benchmade Triage here. On the good side, first off, this is a very beefy and durable and reliable sort of knife. What I mean by that is that it is G10 on top of full steel liners. It's a very thick blade stock that's thick behind the edge, hard to damage. You have coated rust-resistant liners, which is great because, well, you don't want to have to worry if you get this wet about your liners, wasting away underneath there. And the axis lock itself is a very straightforward and reliable system. This is running on phosphor bronze washers that you can see in there. And if you get dirt or mud or something, then by and large, it's not going to affect this action too much. And if it does, well, it's a flow-through design, so you can always hose the damn thing out and oil it up a little bit, and you'll be back to, normal pretty quickly. So I got to say, this is well done in that way. This is a knife that is designed to be durable and robust, and I think they've absolutely succeeded at doing that. So that's good. Next thing, the blade on this guy is good. It's got some flat to it. It's got some belly up the front here. It is using a very safe tip design. This kind of classical sheep's foot allows you, it prevents accidentally stabbing into things, and it also allows you a cut like this, where you drag the tip along something, and that way, if you're trying to cut fabric off or something, that's a nice little cut that it offers you there. It has a very nice sharpening choil here. It has a blade steel that's a little bit unusual. This is N680, and N680 is a steel that is very, very stainless. That is what this steel has above anything else. Well, actually, that's not true. There are other choices now that are just as stainless as this guy, even more so. But that is the strength of this steel by far, is the fact that it is relatively stainless, which goes, again, with the overall idea of this is a robust knife. You can have this with you and just not think about it. It's going to be fine. You're not going to rust. You're not going to have trouble. So I appreciate that very much, and I think it is a reasonable choice for this particular knife. So that's good. The clip on this guy is good. It is absolutely going to hold this in securely. You've got plenty of clip length here, so it's going to be hard to get out of there. It is not actually a deep carry clip, even though it is a deep carry clip, because you've got some to pull out of here. And again, in this knife, I think that's very reasonable to do. And so the clip works well. The glass breaker on this guy is not needlessly sharp. So often glass breakers are very sharply pointed, and that snags on things and constantly scrapes on things. Here, having this guy a little bit rounded means that it's a little bit more comfortable, just as you're maneuvering around this on a regular basis, but it should still do the trick. I mean, mind you, I haven't broken any glass with it, so that's something to keep in mind. This has a very, very nice strap cutter. Now, mind you, I'm not the guy to review strap cutters because I don't very often cut straps, but it has some nice things going for it. First off, the steel is 440C. They are willing to explicitly advertise the steel, which is a nice contrast with a lot of strap cutters where it's, sometimes made out of the same material as the liner. This should stay sharp for a good long while, and that's really excellent. You've got a nice big opening as opposed to some of the other ones, especially on the lower end tools, which have a very small opening, and so it's very easy to grab material of different thickness and whatnot, especially when it's not a tiny little patch there. It has a very nice detent as it clicks shut. You can really feel it click open there. And once it has clicked open, you can see that it actually offers you a finger choil here. So you can put your finger right here, and even if something snags it and you're trying to close it, it's not going to close, which is great. And then it is absolutely very sharp. It cuts very effortlessly, with a nice safe tip on here, so it's not going to slice into whatever you're slicing against. Look, as far as strap cutters go, and as far as I'm able to review them, this feels great. And it seems like the best of the strap cutters I've seen on a pocket knife. But again, I may not be the expert for that. I am not. Then finally, on the good side, this knife is absolutely stellar in the Vaseline Factory. Because look at the texture on this freaking knife. It's really hard to show this off, but at some level, you can hear the texture on this. It's so textured. This will not go anywhere in your hand, both because of the contouring here, for instance, giving you this finger groove here, as well as the strong texturing here, as well as the other areas of, you can see texturing here, texturing here, texturing here, texturing here. Even in wet conditions, at the Vaseline Factory fire, this is going to be absolutely solid in your hand, which is absolutely great. And so all of those things to me are the good, that this is a very, very good knife for the Vaseline Factory, with great friction in the hand as well as great contouring for it. The strap cutter is just beautifully done. It is a simple, reliable sort of action, a very beefy and durable knife with a very nice blade, a good clip, a glass breaker that is not needlessly sharp, and just on the whole, it seems very nicely designed for its purpose. And actually, that brings us to the great, so let's go there. To me, what's great about this knife is that it is beautifully suited to the task, at least as far as I can tell. This is a knife that is designed for first responders, for firefighters, for EMTs, paramedics, police, that kind of thing. And I think they've made a lot of intelligent decisions with that very specific focus in mind. Now, mind you, I am not a first responder. In fact, I am a last responder. The best thing I can offer is some first aid training and CPR, and they're all going to be better at that than I am. But looking at this, even just intellectually, for what that seems like it would require, this makes a lot of sense, because they've made decisions like the sheepfoot blade, which is going to make it very easy to make cuts without accidentally stabbing the person you're trying to rescue. The seatbelt cutter is just beautifully designed in a bunch of different ways, like I highlighted here. The glass breaker is there. It's very accessible. It's easy to get to, while still being good for everyday carry. It has a very good stainlessness in the steel, which means that this is going to be super reliable. It's beefy and it is grippy. So even in watery or bloody situations, let's be real here, if you're rescuing, that's a factor, this is something that's going to stay in your hand, and it's not going to be a dangerous tool. And so to me, that is absolutely what's great, is that every aspect of this knife seems to have been thought through in terms of how can I make this knife better for those kinds of people, with those kinds of needs. And I think that really shows, especially if you compare it to some lower end sorts of, fire rescue knives that are really, really awful. So to me, at least, that's what's great, is that they have a very specific function in mind, and they have pursued it and really honed this knife to fit it just beautifully. Let's talk about what's bad. Honestly, there's not all that much bad I can say about the knife, but I do have some nitpicks. One thing to keep in mind is that this steel, the N680, is not the strongest performer in terms of wear resistance. You are trading a little bit of edge retention for the stainlessness of it. I think it's absolutely good to go for everyday carry. You're just going to have to sharpen it a little bit more often than some of other Benchmade steels, like, for instance, your M4 or something. So that's a compromise you're making. It's not a bad one. It still works, but it's something to keep in mind. Next thing, although the rest of the knife is ambidextrous, which probably should have been in the good, because you can use the axis lock from either side and flip the clip, the strap cutter isn't really. It's kind of meant for the right thumb here. I imagine that somebody more skilled with their left hand could get it working with the index finger more regularly. I am deeply unskilled with my left hand, though. But that is something to keep in mind, that this is mostly ambidextrous. Not quite, though. Next thing, the blade on this guy is not super slicey. And again, this is a nitpick. The knife is very, very good, but it's not super slicey. It's a little thick behind the edge. It's built for durability. That makes sense. And it looks worse than it is because they missed the sharpening choil. The sharpening choil should have gone out just a little bit further than it did. But still, if you're looking to go straight from the rescue scene to the deli where you're going to cut up tomatoes, this may not be your best choice. It's a very unusual situation. But hey, Vaseline Factories are no worse. So there you go. Next thing, this guy is pretty heavy and beefy, and that's going to be a little bit of a problem for some people. This has 3.5 inches of blade, but it comes in at 5.1 ounces of knife. That's pretty heavy, and especially compare it to something like your 940 here, 2.6 ounces for the same amount of blade length. Oh, it's a chubby bunny, and it's also just chubby. It's big in the pocket, and actually, that's the next thing, is that this knife isn't really great in the pocket because it is a little bit big. It's very, very textured. It's very grabby. There are lots of elements of this that are just, and, you know, the other thing is that this clip is right on top of this texturing. This is absolutely a double-edged sword. It means that this is not coming out of your pocket without you putting in some serious effort, but it also means that this knife is going to eat your pocket alive over time here. So, you know, if the force is paying for your pockets, then sure, whatever. But for everyday carry, for somebody wearing slacks or something, this is completely, ridiculous. See, damn, you put a dent in my table. It's a joke. Next thing, and I get it, but it bothers me on principle. This knife is Loctited shut. It almost makes sense here. I mean, lives might literally depend on this knife, and so I'm sympathetic to wanting everything to stay in position. And it's an axis lock knife, and it's on washers, so you can just kind of hose it out, and it's going to be 90%. And you can send it back to Benchmade if there's a problem, and but I'm still kind of opposed to it on basic principle. Maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm biased, but I do wish that this could be maintained, because I think I could actually make the action a little bit better too if I were to get in there and maintain it. But it is something that you got to keep in mind. If you're somebody who really likes to be able to keep your knives running optimally, you're going to be fighting Loctite on a bunch of screws here. And, you know, that on the whole is, those are the bad things, but all of them honestly aren't all that bad. It is designed for what it is doing, and, you know, the fact that it's not great in the pocket means it's not great for me, but it's not a problem for everybody else. And so, you know, I think it's a really solid design. So the bad things were, though, that it is Loctited shut, but I get it. It's not great in the pocket, but I get it at some level. It is absolutely heavy because it's beefy. It's not a super slicer because it's beefy. The strap cutter isn't ambidextrous, and N690, you're trading a little bit of wear resistance for that stain resistance. On the ugly side, I've been saying this, unfortunately Benchmade has had a bad run of quality control for a little while here, and so I'm always telling people right now in 2017 that you should buy Benchmades in person or use a retailer who's able to help, so that you can make sure that your Benchmade doesn't have vertical blade play where the blade waggles like this, horizontal blade play where it waggles like this, and it does all of that while still swinging freely and having a centered blade. This is just an extra step that you should take with Benchmade until they get their quality control back on the straight and narrow, so to speak. It's ugly. It's not great at all, but hopefully, you know, you'll be able to do it within a couple of minutes and problem solved. Or if you get one online and it does have a problem, just return it to the retailer or send it back to Benchmade and make them make it right. But either way, that is the ugly thing, is that right now in 2017 with Benchmade, you need to do some of the quality control that they're not doing. Let's go into your final conclusion. Look, final conclusion, this is a knife that is custom designed for the needs of first responders. And at some level, that means I'm probably not the person to review this knife because it really isn't meant for me. I mean, at some level, this is like me reviewing this knife is like me reviewing maxi pads. I mean, sure, I can talk about it, toss one in the shorts, give it a go, but I just don't have a real use for what this offers. I'm not adequately able to test it in the context it's meant for, and so you probably shouldn't treat me as any authority in this particular review. Take this review with even more of a grain of salt than you take the rest of them with. But the thing is, from my perspective, from what I think a first responder would want, this seems to be really well designed for those purposes. The functions are there and they're well done, and every choice that they've made here, even the ones that I disagree with for my everyday life, seem to have been made in support of those specific goals. And they don't appear to have made major compromises or cut corners that affect the knife in that way. This is a great tool for that. What I can speak to is this knife in an everyday carry context. This knife on days when you're off duty. This makes a lot of sense on the days that you're on the fire department team and what have you. But the rest of the time, this is fine too. It's a little bit big. It's a little heavy. It's over-textured, and it's really meant for the durability over slicing power. I mean, you're getting all the features you want, you know, if you're on the ladder, so to speak, as a firefighter, but you're paying that price on days when you're not on the ladder. So this, as a result, is not where I would send your average boring jackass who wants a pocket knife. This is designed for a specific niche, and if you're not in that niche, this isn't designed for you. But that said, this guy is going to be A-okay in the pocket, for instance, if you want to carry it on days you're off duty. Makes sense there. It's still a great knife, and it's still absolutely fine. So my final conclusion here is that if you are a first responder type, or you're just in need of the capabilities that this knife provides, you are absolutely going to love this knife because it's beautifully made for those specific needs. It is a damn solid knife with intelligent decisions made throughout. It's a fine knife the rest of the week when you're not on duty, and I think for you, this is absolutely and totally going to be a shining freaking gem. It's conditional, not a gem for everybody, but if you are in the target market, this is a great knife, and I will absolutely recommend this as a choice for you. But, you know, what the heck do I know? Anyways, I hope that this has been interesting, that I effectively triaged this knife, and I have declared it absolutely good to go. Good joke there? No? Okay. But mostly, I hope that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of the day, and I've rescued you from making some bad choices. Bye now.